In all the years I've known you, I've said two things. Number one, when this man steps in front of a microphone to speak, speaks with passion, speaks with honesty, and is always insightful. But number two, he's not one who actively seeks the camera like some players do. They love being in front of the camera. So I have to ask you, who talked you into doing a podcast?
Well, sorry about that. My brother and I have talked about it for a while. I think that it's always been something that we've kind of toyed around with. We've always tried to figure something out that we can do together.
Yeah.
And, whether it's a game show, like we've had so many different ideas. Right. And, I think a podcast seemed to be the easiest because you can do it remotely.
Right.
You don't have to be in the same space. It offers the most flexibility. So we've thought about it for a number of years. His team, A&A management, has been trying to facilitate kind of a way to make that happen, and kind of got linked up with the right crew that, it all the pieces just came together. And I think we felt more comfortable also seeing other players do it and have success, and not, a big worry about starting the podcast was, how the season doesn't go well. This ain't going to go over well, especially in Philadelphia. Like you're going to see blowback from it.
Yeah.
So I think we were both pretty confident with how our teams were going to do. Draymond Green was fresh off of starting his podcast and going to the finals in the NBA the year before we did it. So there was a lot of stuff that was like, you know what, it's worth taking a stab at and getting it going. I reached out to Chris Long, who obviously played with for a couple of years.
Yep.
And he was like, man, my biggest advice is start it while you're still playing.
Yep.
It's going to gain so much traction quicker if you do it while you're still playing. And glad I certainly heeded that advice.
You've had a lot of like pinch me moments in your life. I mean, certainly the playing Travis in the Super Bowl and how crazy that was. But when he was hosting SNL, and you were great too in your cameos that you made. Is there ever a minute where you're sitting in the seats and you're like, dude, my brother's on the stage right now giving a monologue for Saturday Night Live?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was very surreal. That's obviously such an iconic show that we all grew up watching. I was, first of all, flabbergasted when he told me he was offered to host it. Right. I'm like, wait, they want you to host Saturday Night Live? Like, is this real? But then it kind of hit me again. We were doing one of the rehearsals, right? And this isn't even the dress rehearsal. I think this is the kind of running through the monologue the night before the dress rehearsal and show. And he comes out and he starts crying. And I'm like, what is going on? And I asked him after, so he kind of composed himself, finished his monologue, and they're getting set for the next deal that they're going to practice. I'm like, what? You all right? What kind of got you? What was it? And he said, dude, when I was back there, and I guess I didn't know this. I don't know if you guys know, but that little door that they come out of, that all the guests come out of where the band's playing.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the hosts and people that have been there throughout the history of the show have signed it and written things on it. So like he's back there getting ready to come out, and he's seeing like Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, like all these like iconic people. And I think it just all hit him at one time.
Wow.
Like, dude, I'm about to be on a stage and on a show that is like such an epic scale, and just seeing all those people, I think really just all hit him. Bam.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That is awesome.
Jason, for as much of an incredible player as you've been throughout your career, and I know you don't like to talk about it, but I think it's a slam dunk. You're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when your time comes. That speech you gave after that Super Bowl in 2017 will go down as one of the greatest moments in Philadelphia sports history. And nobody expected that from you. But I was telling Rob earlier, I said I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, and I'm standing and everybody's in their speech, and I see you at the top, and you had a few beers along the way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm telling my producer, if Jason Kelce gets the mic, this is going to be epic. What you did far exceeded anything I thought was going to come out of your mouth. But I'm leading up to this. Did that moment bring out a side of you that you didn't know existed in terms of passion, being elaborate, and leading up to what you're doing now?
I don't know if that moment, I feel like I've always kind of lived that way. I've just never kind of had that opportunity or that stage. That moment it felt like it was more than just me. I know that I was up there giving the speech, but it was such passion because, and people, did you write it down? Like, I didn't need to write it down. I lived it. Right. So it all just came kind of flowing out. And, I was lying awake weeks leading up to that. And, I very much felt that feeling from, my whole career, the team's whole career, Nick Foles' career, Doug Peterson's, and then obviously the fans trying to get to that moment. So I think it all just culminated perfectly and came out of me. But, I don't know. I think it certainly helped go into this other stuff and definitely gave me a name right away on a much larger scale. That wasn't the emphasis of doing it, but it's definitely helped launch into other things as well.
Happy byproduct.
Exactly.
There you go.
One of the things I know you guys had Barkley on recently as well, as you mentioned. And one of the things I admire about both of you guys a great deal is you're both very accessible. You're not, in some mansion and nobody ever gets to see you anytime. Like, I can't tell you how many people on my Facebook page will have a picture of you at the beach with their kids, right? Jason Kelce's having a catch with my son, and this is insane, and whatever. But I love that. That can be tough because you do have to sometimes deal with knuckleheads. But was that a conscious decision that you made? Like, hey, look, I'm not going to be one of these guys who just hides. I'm going to live my life like I want to live my life.
Yeah, I try. I think it is a conscious decision to stay grounded and to do the things that you want to do and just live your life. It can be troubling at times for sure. There's no question about it, especially, you're out at a bar with a bunch of people that are drunk. It's not going to maybe be the best time for you sometimes, but for the most part, it's incredibly rewarding, especially with kids. And, you see the joy on people's faces. This is one of the beautiful things that sports does. And, to be able to provide that is truly an honor most of the time. And I think, I still, I want my kids. I don't want my kids to grow up living in a mansion and not, hanging out with kids and going to the ballpark. And, I don't think, I don't view myself any differently than anybody else. And I try to just live my life the same way. And I think that, I don't know that it's like a conscious, like, I'm going to go do this to put this out there. I just think it's, I try to just be who I am. And, that's kind of the way it works.
With you being so accessible, have there been moments though when it's been a little tense or uncomfortable?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, especially when alcohol is involved. I mean, I got my event coming up this week at the Jersey Shore. But, whenever alcohol is involved, people's inhibitions go down. And if I'm in a hurry and, I try and make, I really do want every fan or person that comes up to me to have a good experience, right? I want to, because I know how much they've put into it to give me the opportunity to make as much money as I'm making and play this game for a living. And I think I try to go and do right by them and to be just a good person. But I'm not perfect. I get caught when I'm in a hurry or a bad mood. So, there's awful, there's certainly moments where it hasn't been as fun.
Times in the locker room, you gave me the cross out a couple of times.
That was deserved.
It can definitely happen in the locker room, especially after a loss or things didn't go very well. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows in that thing. So
yeah. Well, Jason, let's talk about it because you got the Kelce's annual Team 62 fundraiser for Eagles Autism Foundation. Patty's Green at O'Donnell's Poorhouse in Sea Isle. That's 6 days from now. It's June 28th. And it's 6A to 6P. I know you're also going to be guest bartending at the OD as well. And I know what a hit this has been. It just the video of it has been phenomenal the last couple of years. I wasn't down there in person, but I heard it was just unreal.
Yeah, I mean, listen, anybody that's been to the shore knows that everybody's looking to have fun already. They're just looking for an excuse to have a good time, right?
Exactly.
And it's the OD is that kind of bar where you're looking to have a good time and party and hang out with friends. And they've been kind enough to let us use their facilities, their staff, donate to Eagles Autism Foundation. And, my brother came for the first time last year And he's like, man, I do a lot of charity events. That's probably the most fun I've ever had at a charity event.
That's
You know,
awesome.
it's nobody's taking themselves too seriously. We're all just out there to raise money for a good cause, but more importantly, hang out and have fun. Like, I think it all goes hand in hand, and you can do all three of those things at this event. And I certainly plan on doing that.
Mhm.
Now, anytime in all the years I've covered this game, one thing I love to ask current and former players is this: when they make the transition from an athlete to the media side. So I've got to ask you this.
Okay.
What have you learned about yourself now that you're on this side of the microphone that you didn't really care for when you were on the other side of the microphone, but you have a better appreciation for it now?
You know, first of all, one thing that I didn't know was, how hard it is.
Yeah.
I think interviewing somebody and trying to create like a purposeful conversation and steer it while it's still coming off genuine and normal
Yep.
is not an easy task. And actually putting in work so that you're prepared and not just, kind of shooting from nowhere in the middle of the show. I've gained a bunch of respect just from that side of things. And even more so, to be honest, when I went to broadcast boot camp and traditional media routes where you're like in a studio, and that's like a whole nother level of difficulty and preparation that needs to go into that. So, I think I've certainly gained that perspective.
Mhm.
And I think I've already had this perspective, but, I think a lot of guys, and I say this in particular, because Philadelphia is a tough market to play in for a lot of players.
Mhm.
I think a lot of guys view people that say negative things about them as though it's like a personal affront, or like it's unfair that they're being attacked, and they become defensive right away. And I think, first of all, going through it for my own career and being up and down and all that, but then also being on the media side, I think, the media is just going to say what they think and, what has been put out on the field. It might not be right all the time, and the person saying it might have the wrong opinion on it, but it's not ever something that I think players should take and, get offended by for the most part. I think the reality is, everything you do is kind of what ends up getting said most of the time. And, what you do out on the field ultimately controls what is said about you. And I wish more players got that. I think every player kind of has to go through this to learn that side of things. And some guys get it. And in this city, if you get it, it works out really well. And some guys don't get it. And if you don't get it in this city, it's not going to work out very well. So I think, the honesty that the media has to have to be, one, good at their jobs, but also two, accountable to their viewers, is something that I think at times is rough to take as a player. But, you see it firsthand when you start doing it, that it's a requirement